Hello guys, this is Rajendra and we are going to talk about the DevOps. Okay, so specifically this course DevOps we are going this is about the introduction about the DevOps. Okay, we are dividing this in two parts. Okay, if you see the top highlighted part we are going to take in this particular part, and the remaining part we are going to take in the next video. Okay, so in this particular part what we are going to discuss is what is the requirement of the DevOps. Okay, what is the problem that industry was facing, and then this DevOps concept or the DevOps team or DevOps engineers came into the industry, right? Then what is DevOps? Okay, where it is used. Okay, then what is the difference between the traditional processes and how this DevOps works. Okay, and then next, how this DevOps is different from the agile process, and we are going to see the difference between DevOps and agile. What are skills required for the DevOps engineer? What is the life cycle of the DevOps engineer? Okay, so we are going to see all these step by step. Okay, so let's start. So if you see the typical how the life cycle of the developer or the how the whole process of developing any application goes. Okay, so what happens usually, from the customer we take the requirements. Okay, and then developer works on that, they create the product. Okay, and then they test it, and then it is given to the operation teams. Okay, now this operation team is deploys this application, okay, on the production environment. Okay, now if there is any problem, okay, there is any problem in the production environment, again that particular application is again given back to the development with a new requirement. Again development works on that product, again give it to the operation. Now operation team again test it. By the time, if let's say from the customer side we got a new requirement, okay, again then develops that feature, adds to the main application, and again shifted to the operation team. Okay, so this cycle goes on. So here the problem is that if we got the new requirement from the customer or from the operations team, developer develops that product completely, neither customer nor the operation team is aware of that. Okay, once that is finished, then only they will get to know that whether it's working or not. Okay, so this is a very huge gap. Okay, so let's see what happens and what is the consequences of this. So now, as discussed, development works on the requirements that we receive from the client. Okay, and then operations team, once the product is ready, they create script, they make some automation, or with the help of manual effort they deploy that in the environment. Okay, so but there is a huge gap. We are going to discuss what is this gap and why this happens. Okay, now while deploying that application, if something goes wrong, as discussed, this operation team goes back to the developer, and then developer starts fixing that. And okay, and then once fixed, again it goes to the operation team. Okay, so this is a step-by-step approach that the traditional way we are doing it. Okay, so what is the solution for this? Okay, for this we have a DevOps team is the solution, or the DevOps developer is the solution. Okay, so how this particular DevOps team works. Okay, so that we are going to see. Okay, so what we call as a DevOps is a nothing but a development team plus operational team. Okay, now inside this dev is means the dev plus ops is the abbreviations of, for dev is for developers and ops is for operations team. Okay, now inside dev there could be a developers as well as tester. Okay, and then in the operation team we can have a operations guys. Okay, they could be site reliability engineer, administrator, okay, deployment engineers and all. Okay, so this is DevOps engineer is nothing but a combination of both this. Okay, so if you see, if you want to understand in a simple words what is DevOps, so what we can see is the does the alignment of development and IT operation with better communication and collaboration. Okay, so that means this DevOps guy is continuously in interaction with the operations team as well as the development team. So the gap that we have seen in between those two different teams, that is filled by the DevOps guy, so that every team will get to know what is happening and they will get continuous update. Okay, so with this what will happen, whatever developer team is doing, operation team will get to know. Okay, so that they can prepare the environment in that way, or if there is some small mistake happen in the environment, production environment, they can quickly go back to the developer and ask them to develop that. Okay, so that's why the time taken to process all these, it is reduced. Okay, and that's why the time to market or the deployment time or the application deployment time gets reduced. Okay, now what is the typical life cycle of the DevOps? Okay, so if you see how this life cycle happens, if you see, first what happens is the planning. Okay, now planning happens on top of, once we receive some requirement from the client. Okay, we do the planning of that. Okay, then once the planning is done, we started coding, means the developer starts coding. Okay, and then once code is done, okay, then we build that code, then testing team will test that code, and then finally we'll release that code to the operation team. Okay, so now this operation team will deploy that code, okay, in the production environment with the help of some means they will operate on that deployment with some tools. Okay, and once the deployment is done, they will start monitoring it, how this application is running, is there any problem. Okay, now while monitoring, if the operation team came to know that there is some problem with any feature, or it is not working as expected, or it is failing due to some reason, then again this operation team reports this failure to the developers team. Okay, now this developer starts again planning how to solve that, how to work on that issue. Okay, and now again to fix that issue, okay, they start coding on that. Okay, again once that coding is done, again we go back and means we build that. Okay, we have to rebuild everything. Once the build is done, again we have to test everything, and then we release. Okay, so this is how the complete life cycle will happen. Okay, so if you see tools that are used in every step of this life cycle, okay, we are going to see all these tools as and when required. Okay, so if you want to just name some in which particular stages which tools are used. So if you see, while coding, for coding we use Confluence, Jira, Git. Okay, that means to store that code. Okay, we can, once the developers develops the code, we push that code on the Git. Okay, what is the use of Jira? Jira is to track the issue, means who is doing what and what all features it is doing. Okay, Confluence is again for tracking. Okay, now for building there are a lot of tools. Okay, but if you take example like let's say that your application in a Java, so if you want to build that, we can use the Maven. Okay, for every language to build that tool there are some tools, and accordingly we use the tools. Okay, now for testing there are a lot of automation tools are available. So to name a few of them, we have a Selenium as well as JUnit that we can use. Now to release the code after developing and the testing, develop, build, test cycle, to release the code we have some tools called Jenkins, CodeShip that we can use. Okay, and for deployment we can use any like Docker, we can use AWS, we can use. Now while deploying, to operate, we have multiple tools as well that we can use, like Kubernetes, Ansible, Shape. Okay, So all these tools we are going to see one by one. Okay, and to monitor, again we have Nashos, Splunk, Datadog. Okay, all these tools we can. So if you see, there are a lot of tools, not even if you see the listed are very few, but there are a lot of tools are available in the market, and we can use all those tools in different stages of the DevOps life cycle. Okay, now if you see, just go through the process. So what we are saying in the development, what we do is this in the development we develop the product. Okay, in the development stage, and then in the development process, once the product is developed, so with the help of DevOps team, what help development team get is that it speed up the software development and delivery process. Okay, then in the testing, QA team use tools like Selenium to identify and fix in the new piece of code. Okay, again in the integration phases, new functionality we can easily integrate and test take place with the help of continuous deployment. Okay, and then again we can do monitoring whatever the application we have developed. Right, now let's see what is the difference between DevOps and the Agile. Okay, and how the typical stakeholder communication chain in the IT process means, how this communication happens. So if you see, as we discussed, we get the requirement from the customer. Okay, and then developer develops that product, then tester tests that, and then once that is done, we pass on to the infrastructure team. Okay, but again, let's say customer given the requirement to the developer develops that product, and after some time customer again came with a new requirement. Okay, so here there is a gap between customer and the developer team, right? Because if a customer comes with new features again and again, and developer develops that feature again and again, then that will take really huge time. Okay, and again that same happen with developer and operations team. Okay, so this is how typical IT process is. Okay, but now to reduce that, we got a Agile. Okay, so how this Agile helps the reduce the gap between customer and developer. Okay, so there are a lot of Agile methodologies that nowadays IT companies are using, like this customer are continuously interact with the dev team, and dev team continuously giving the feedback to the customer, so that what happens, if there is any new feature, customer can easily update it to the developer on a periodic basis, and the developer then can develop that feature quickly. Okay, if there is anything wrong, they can quickly update to the customer. Customer can then understand that, and accordingly they can modify the feature. Okay, and then developer quickly do that. Okay, so this is the advantage of Agile process, so that on the daily basis, or on the means whatever the timeline that Agile follows, like we on daily basis we have a Scrum meetings. Okay, so that on that Scrum meeting we can easily understand what is dev team doing. Okay, and if there is any requirement, customer can easily pass through to the developer team. Okay, so the gap between customer and developer is reduced by Agile methodologies. Okay, now when comes DevOps. Okay, as discussed, the DevOps comes in between the developer and operations team. So if you see, the difference between Agile and DevOps is that Agile is used to reduce the gap between customer and the developers. Okay, and the DevOps is used to reduce the gap between developers and the operations team. Okay, now typically if you want to see what all responsibility or roles that DevOps engineer does. Okay, so if you see, the DevOps engineer works with developers, operators, and other production IT staff to administer the code releases. Okay, so DevOps guy should have soft skill as well as a good communication skill, so that they can easily interact with the developer as well as operation team, and they can collaborate all this development, testing and operations. Okay, now DevOps approach needs frequent and incremental changes to the code version, right? Which means frequent deployment and testing regimens. Although DevOps engineers need to code occasionally from scratch, like if there are means for DevOps guy, he should know some coding as well, right? Because if there are some code, we have to write some code to automate the things, so that's why the DevOps guy should know some codings as well, right? Then if you see some roles, okay, what all roles that DevOps engineer can do. So if you want to see if you see DevOps engineer should have the soft skill. Why a soft skill required? Because he has to interact with the all the stakeholders in this process, like developer, tester, operation teams, okay, so that they can provide feedback, inputs to all these teams, right? Then she should have a problem solving skill. He should be a quick learner, okay, so that he can understand easily what is the problem and how this development team can fix that problem, okay. Then this DevOps guy should analyze, design and evaluation automation script and system. Whatever the operation teams are doing, DevOps guy should understand that and help operation team as well. Now this DevOps guy having a better visibility of the product, because he is working with the development team as well as the operation team. Then he can easily manage project through open standard based platforms, right? So these are the some roles or the responsibility and the skills of a DevOps engineers, okay. So that's it for now in the first part, okay. The remaining part of this introduction of the DevOps we are going to see in the next part of the video, okay. So thanks, let's meet in the next video.